something that's really hard with endometriosis is, it's a disease. It's an invisible disease, quote unquote. Like, you can't see it. It's not like, a cut on your leg or a broken arm where people are sympathetic because they can see your pain. They can see your injury. And this is not that type of disease.
Welcome to Get Pregnant Naturally, where functional medicine and natural fertility solutions will help you get pregnant and have your baby. Hey everyone, my name is Sarah Clark, and my mission is to inspire, motivate, and empower you. Most of all, I want you to wake up. So with functional medicine, we can discover what causes infertility and eventually reverse the condition. Today, I'm excited to welcome Shannon Cohn to the podcast, and we're digging into endometriosis awareness and the link to infertility. So I'll just give you a little bio here on Shannon. So for over a decade, Shannon Cohn produced several award-winning feature films with Mangusta Productions, a New York City-based production company. Most recently, she directed Endo, a feature documentary hailed as a first step in the plan for change by Newsweek. She produced and appears on C Nation, a travel adventure series that aired in over 60 countries on Discovery Channel and National Geographic. The production called for sailing on 25 different boats over 6 months with her 2-year-old in tow. Before becoming a filmmaker, Shannon practiced international law and was part of the legal team that prosecuted Enron. Check out her website at endowhat.org. Hey Shannon, welcome to the podcast. Excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. So I was just reading your bio actually before we started here. So you have quite an interesting bio. So maybe just kind of share how you came to filmmaking and specifically films about endometriosis.
Sure, I'm happy to. Yes, I definitely had a long, circuitous route to filmmaking. I had several different careers. I was a lawyer actually before I became a filmmaker, and I practiced international law at a large law firm. And actually even our law firm worked with the Justice Department and the prosecution of Enron. So definitely some interesting cases that I worked on, but I also felt that it wasn't necessarily something I want to do for the rest of my life. So I walked away from the law and did several different types of things to kind of try like what I really wanted to do. I worked in Africa for a while and worked back in the US, and I decided that maybe film was something I wanted to go into because when I was actually in Africa, I realized there are so many stories out in the world that aren't being told by mainstream media and that really need to have a voice, someone out there telling them. So I thought, well, I had no idea how to make a film, by the way. Mm-hmm. I knew how to tell a story and I knew how to photograph, but I had no idea really about technical aspects of filmmaking. So I applied to film school at NYU in New York and was lucky enough to get accepted. And that was delving into this world of film and storytelling. And I mean, I've loved it ever since. I always was drawn more to documentary rather than narrative, which are, scripted films, just because I do think that real life is more interesting than fiction. Mm-hmm. And also probably just my background, I'm really interested in social justice and moving conversations about different issues forward using film as a tool.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
And that's exactly how I came to make a film about endometriosis. A few years ago, I was lucky. I actually have endometriosis, and I've had symptoms since I was a teenager. And I went 13 years before I was actually diagnosed. So I've run the gamut, like many women with endometriosis, of a delayed diagnosis. And basically, after I had 2 daughters, naturally, I was very fortunate. And I was just finishing breastfeeding my younger daughter, and I read an article about how toxins are, transferred from a mother's breast milk to the daughter, and, how that also plays a role in endometriosis. I can't remember exactly the research study, but it scared me to death. Mm-hmm. Because, I looked down at my sweet daughter who is a year old and just thinking, could this be her future? What I've just gone through with this disease? And that really galvanized me to do something about it. So I had been making films and documentaries and, creating social movements around them for a few years by that time. and decided, well, endometriosis, the landscape seems pretty stagnant. There haven't been any real developments in medicine to help, endometriosis in decades, and women are still going so long before they're diagnosed. So why not try to make a film and try to use that as somehow to move the conversation forward and to educate women, hopefully with the right information, so that they don't have to wait for doctors to tell them about the disease. And then also hopefully galvanize a social movement around it.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, I watched the film, and the average, it takes, as you said, it took 13 years for you to be diagnosed, and it was the same thing for people in the documentary. There, it just takes so long for their symptoms to be recognized, and almost them feeling like a hypochondriac, or that pains in their head, or one lady is saying, someone said that they thought she had bipolar. So it just kind of really being able to, even doubting these symptoms are real.
Right. I mean, it's kind of outrageous that in today's time that women are not being believed when they go into a doctor's office and convey the symptoms they're having. It's almost unbelievable, but it happens.
Yeah.
Still today, I mean, by large numbers. And that was something so shocking to me. And as I interviewed, because I interviewed scores of women for these films, and I mean, was told the same thing repeatedly by different women of different ages, different socioeconomic statuses, different nationalities. So this is something that, I mean, women, no matter who you are, I always say with a little bit of cynicism that endometriosis is an equal opportunity disease. That it's a great equalizer, that anyone can have it. And I mean, of course, even men can have it. So it's something that everyone should care about.
And then, people listening to this podcast are struggling with their fertility. And a lot of people, 50% of patients with unexplained infertility actually have endometriosis.
Correct. Yep. And I think that would probably surprise a lot of people. Actually, one of the experts in the film, Cameron Ashot, he's in Palo Alto in California, told me once, he said, if all of the, tests are normal for fertility tests and we can't find something that's causing it, to me, the patient has endometriosis until proven otherwise, not the other way around. So, and I think that he's probably onto something there, because I think endometriosis is woefully underdiagnosed, especially in women who may be having fertility problems, and that if they knew that earlier, they may be able to address it more effectively.
And so what are some of the common symptoms?
Symptoms of endometriosis?
Yeah, I guess there's a whole host of them, but sort of some more of the common ones, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, endometriosis, this is the kicker, I think, that why it's so confusing is endometriosis is a very individual disease, and there's not just one symptomatic profile for everyone. I mean, yes, a lot of people know that it's painful periods, and that is true. A lot of women and girls present with painful periods, but beyond that, I mean, GI symptoms are incredibly common. I know there's a recent research study that said that 90% of endometriosis patients had some sort of GI symptoms in their past. Beyond that, urinary symptoms are common: fatigue, migraines, bloating, a lot of, I mean, they kind of run the gamut. So, I mean, and I've had all of that. And there are even women who have never had any of these symptoms, and then they just have trouble getting pregnant, and they don't know why, and they have endometriosis. Or I've met plenty of women who only had GI symptoms. They didn't have necessarily, painful or heavy periods. They were kind of normal, but they did have GI symptoms, and they ended up having endometriosis. So there's not just one symptomatic profile. So I would caution any of your listeners against saying like, oh, well, I didn't have painful periods, so it can't be that, because it can be that. So it's something to explore.
Yeah, and I guess and then because sometimes it is thrown out saying, oh, it may be in endometriosis, then how do we actually figure it out for sure, diagnose for sure?
Oh, wow. Well, the only way to diagnose endometriosis is by, laparoscopic surgery and having tissue taken to pathology and confirmed via pathology. There's really no other way to diagnose it or rule it out. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of doctors even are incorrectly think that, you can kind of rule out endometriosis if you don't see anything on the ultrasound or MRI. And that's just not true, because a lot of endometriosis, I mean, yes, they would probably see an endometrioma, which is a endometriosis, like a cyst on the ovary, or they may see like big, patches of endometriosis, but a lot of endometriosis could be diffuse. It could be small. It could be microscopic. So that's not necessarily going to show up. And here's also a key aspect of that. Even if a patient goes to see a doctor, like her local OBGYN, for example, and they do surgery, they may not recognize endometriosis, because a lot of endometriosis in medical school has been taught that it's like these black powder burn lesions in the pelvis. And a lot of doctors don't realize that endometriosis lesions can be red, they can be blue, they can be purple, they can be clear, they can be kind of white and fibrotic. It varies so much. And unfortunately, a lot of doctors don't recognize that. And I know many women who have gone through multiple surgeries and were told, oh yeah, I got all of it, or I didn't see anything, only to be operated on by a specialist later. And I mean, they had a ton of endometriosis.
Yeah. And it can also be in other parts of the body too, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's most common in the pelvis, but it can be on the diaphragm. It can be in the lungs. There are cases where it's been in the brain. There are, and it's been, like I said earlier, there have been cases of men who had endometriosis. Most of these men have been treated for prostate cancer. It's a mysterious disease, absolutely. And I hope that we're on our way to finding some answers for it.
And so then when we hear about endometriosis, we hear about these different stages. And I talked a little bit before on a podcast about this, but so stages 1 to 4. And sometimes people think, 4 is the worst. That's the most painful and you got really bad, whereas that may not be the case. I think we're looking at, there's change afoot, I guess, with looking at removing the stages.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a little confusing because when people traditionally think about stages, they think of like cancer staging, for example, where if you have stage 4, that's really bad. And, you likely have tumors throughout the body. And that's kind of how they've taken endometriosis staging. It's just basically the presence of lesions throughout the body. But another confounding thing about endometriosis is that pain and symptoms of endometriosis may not necessarily correlate to presence, amount of disease present. So there have been many women who have absolutely no pain, cannot get pregnant, and then they're operated on and they're full of endometriosis. They have, lesions everywhere. Mm-hmm. Where there have been women who have been in incredible pain, just really incredible pain, debilitating, and they've been operated on, and they're quote unquote stage 1. So there's something there. And there are some really smart researchers I know at MIT and looking into this and trying to see okay, why do some women present with a lot of pain when they have very little presence of disease and vice versa? So hopefully we'll be having some answers soon.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's important. I think, about that, because people think, the person stage 1 is probably not in as much pain. It could be the opposite.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's really demoralizing, right? I mean, if you all of a sudden, you're like, you're just a stage 1, you've got to be overreacting. I mean, that's not the case. So we do need a staging system that, in my opinion, that takes into account how it impacts the quality of life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I guess obviously when the period comes, pain is not normal. So there really it should be a non-event. Now, mm-hmm. And when people with endometriosis, that's sometimes not the case. And so then it sort of goes into that, the pain and suffering, depression, kind of that, chronic pain every month. Women are experiencing this, and men. Do men experience the pain with this? How does it work for them?
When men have endometriosis, I mean, yeah. I don't know the answer to that question as much. They are symptomatic, but I do think it varies like in women, but I can't go into great detail. I don't know as much about that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess kind of with that pain and then each month, and then sometimes, chronic pain, depression, a whole bunch of other things. And especially when people may not even believe you that there was something going on. As many people in the film that they were talking about were dismissed by doctors for years. So maybe talk a little bit about that cycle of pain.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like when you feel badly, like say, for example, you're sick and you have the flu. And the first day, you feel badly. And then the second day and the third day and the fourth day, it does start affecting you mentally. You just kind of feel like down, you kind of feel low, and that's a common phenomenon. And just imagine feeling like that if you're bedridden for years, for months on end, where there are certain days you can't get out of bed, which is common. And it does start triggering that kind of emotional response. And there's been a ton of research going into it. It's how it's a vicious cycle. Because when you suffer, obviously it causes a negative emotional response, and it can take you down into a deeper, darker spiral. So yeah, I mean, yet another reason why we need more research and more attention to the disease.
Yeah, I remember a woman in your film talked about how it was just really ruined a lot of her relationships because she's not able to, each month, not able to, I guess, function for those amount of days. And then it's just her personality kind of changes during that time because she's in excruciating pain. And so some people either can understand or others don't. And it's been very difficult for her to navigate it.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's something that's really hard with endometriosis is, it's a disease. It's an invisible disease, quote unquote. You can't see it. It's not like, a cut on your leg or a broken arm where people are sympathetic because they can see your pain. They can see your injury. And this is not that type of disease. And so it can really wreak havoc on relationships, on friendships, with partners. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize and kind of discount. And I hope we can do better.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then also, obviously, when you're in chronic pain, and there's stress that's involved in here as well. And then stress can then lead to inflammation. So what's your take on helping someone with endo and dealing with the stress of the disease as well as everyday or a standard Western, lifestyle?
Right. Well, I mean, the idea behind that is that when you're stressed, your body releases more cortisol, and cortisol can then lead to more inflammation in the body. So it's a multidisciplinary approach as far as like decreasing inflammation. And I think the cornerstone of that is diet. Mm-hmm. And eating an anti-inflammatory diet, and not eating things that your body doesn't like, even if you do when you taste them, like sugar, yeah. Which is my own personal crutch. I love sugar. Yeah, it's good stuff, but then it's not really good for my body. Mm-hmm. So I do feel better when I'm not eating a ton of sugar, when I'm not eating dairy, when I'm not eating gluten, and just really learning what those trigger foods are for you. So, and, I would say eliminate them, but at the same time, I think we have to be realistic and say, just kind of, try to limit them as much as possible. I mean, a lot of people say the 80-20. I would say it's more like 90-10. And especially if you're trying to get pregnant, I would say eliminate it until, while you're trying. I mean, that would be my advice. That's what I did. And we can talk about that later. Beyond diet, I would say acupuncture is really amazing for relaxing. Really, all of those nice endorphins floating around can really be relaxing. I know it's cost prohibitive for a lot of people, but in a lot of, larger cities, there are a lot of community-based acupuncture clinics. Mm-hmm. I actually go to one where every weekend different acupuncturists come, to a community center, and it's like a sliding scale, which is amazing. And people from the community can come in and experience acupuncture. So I try to support that. Beyond that, meditation is amazing, and just getting outside and getting in the sun. Sometimes if I'm feeling bad, I'll just go out on our back patio and sit and let the sun just hit my face for 10 minutes. And it's amazing what it can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Vitamin D, right? The restorative power. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. The diet, we recommend people, we have people do food sensitivity testing, and then we have them do an elimination diet. So taking out dairy, gluten, corn, soy, peanuts, and eggs, take those out for 10 days and then systematically reintroduce them. And yeah, I don't do dairy, gluten, or corn. And I haven't done processed sugar in years, but I will have some cane sugar, which if I have too much of that, it's like there's a little local vegan gluten-free cupcake place, and I'm like, there's literally thousands of people coming to this place a week, which is really weird because it's a gluten-free vegan bakery, but they're coming because it's got lots of shit, like the cane, it's organic cane sugar, but still it's so once in a while, to kind of figure out those, as you say, those trigger foods.
And something, I mean, this is kind of a personal tip that I found. Like, I found that if I really am just dying for something, I just really want a cookie or a brownie or a cupcake or something, I'm just dying for it. And I have two daughters who are also would love to have it. And I don't want to completely deprive them. I found that if I cook with coconut sugar,
Yes.
it does not trigger any meat. I mean, obviously I can't have, the equivalent of a bag of coconut sugar, but if I put the normal amount of, sugar and substitute for coconut sugar, it's much less of a trigger for me. My body, I can tell it just tolerates it much more.
Yeah, I'm the same kind of. I'll do a little bit of maple syrup or a little bit of honey, or if I'm like having a really bad sugar craving, then we have dates, medjool dates, which are really awesome. I love those.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people with endometriosis, sometimes the first line of defense is to have a hysterectomy. And so why does this not work, or why? Yeah, what's your take on this?
Right. Unfortunately, that's been widely taught in medical schools as well, that doctors should give women a hysterectomy for endometriosis as a definitive treatment. And that is just not the case, period, full stop. It doesn't even make sense. Like, why would when endometriosis is defined as tissue similar to the uterine lining found outside the uterus, why would taking the uterus out solve the problem? I mean, the tissue is still outside the uterus. And it comes from a really old, century-old flawed theory called from John Samson in the 1920s, who put this hypothesis out that endometriosis was caused by retrograde menstruation. And, every month when a woman bled, the blood would come out of fallopian tubes and, kind of like plant, like seeds, in her pelvis. And that's, since, yes, a lot of women do have retrograde menstruation, but that not all of them obviously are developing endometriosis. So a lot of people think there's much more to it than that. There's been a lot of research showing that endometriosis, it has the same incidence in fetuses as, with the adult population. So I really think there's a lot of credence in the fact that it's, a genetic disease. So it gets back to, with Samson, when he said this, basically his thing was, okay, we'll either get a woman pregnant to stop the menses or take it out. And that's just, it's not the case. And that's what's kind of led to a lot of other types of treatments for endometriosis. That's why a lot of women are told, oh, get pregnant. At the same time, they may be experiencing infertility. So yeah, okay, you're telling me to get pregnant, but I can't get pregnant. Or you go on these really kind of harsh, hormonal drugs that kind of put you into a menopausal state or mimic pregnancy to try to treat the disease. And we can get into this, but all of those treatments just kind of, if they do, they just manage symptoms, and they're temporary, because as soon as you go off of any of these, your symptoms will come back. None of them actually are getting rid of the disease. They're just kind of helping you cope, which I think there's a time and place for that, for sure. I mean, each woman is different, but I just think she needs to understand that it's not going to actually treat the disease no matter what her doctor, may think.
Yeah, so the hysterectomy really is not getting to that root cause, because you still have it. And then if it's outside the uterus, you're still in pain and you haven't resolved the issue.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. And then again, we were talking about medications. So the birth control pill, and many people that come to see us have been on long-term birth control and oral birth control, and like 10, 15 years, because when they were young, they were, their periods may have been irregular or they could have been heavy. And then now they're coming off trying to get pregnant. And obviously some people go on to get pregnant quite easily. Other people, it's not the case. And also the birth control pill has been linked to, there's actually a post birth control syndrome where it affects your nutrient levels as well as your microbiome or your gut flora. So why do you think, this maybe question is, I maybe just kind of talked about it, but why do you think that's the first line of defense for endo, giving a birth control pill?
I don't know if you know Philippa Bridge-Cook. She's the director of the Endometriosis Network of Canada, who, by the way, I would recommend her being on this podcast sometime. She's a wealth of information. But she said to me, people generally think hormonal treatments as an easy fix, but they don't fix and they're not easy. And that's why, there's been this long-standing idea from the medical community that a birth control pill can fix anything. Whatever a woman is having with her reproductive system, give her the birth control pill to level it out, to fix it. When it can help some women, I guess, benefits, but at the same time, there are a ton of side effects that people need to be aware of. That's, that's a lot of this. We need to have informed consent and understand what we're going into, so that when doctors, as they do, recommend birth control pills as a first line, that you go into it open eyes. Why do I think? I mean, I can't say in Canada, but in the US, I think it's a lot about marketing of the pharmaceutical industry and the pervasiveness of that. There's a lot of money institutionally pushing drugs through the medical system. So drugs are usually the first things suggested.
That's the same here. As I've talked about this before, but my 16-year-old, and she's made dietary changes, but she's a 16-year-old, so she'll go off and maybe not be completely gluten-free, and then it affects her period, and her periods are really heavy, and she's like, Mom, I want to go to a conventional doctor and see what they have to say. And we go in, and the first thing he says is, let's put you on the pill. And she looks over at me and went, okay, you're right. Mom knows what she's talking about, but it's really, like, it's, as you say, it's a Band-Aid. And when the side effects can be stroke and death, I don't know.
Right. That's a pretty dangerous Band-Aid. Yeah, I mean, for sure. It's not, and especially with teens. When I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I'm just kind of waiting with bated breath to see if she starts developing symptoms as she starts developing. And people have asked, like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I'm going to have to, I mean, right now she eats as well as she can. Like, I'm very vigilant about the things she puts in her body, but I would be very nervous about putting her teenager on birth control pills just because of my own personal experience. But wow, I mean, they are pervasive, and I don't think they're going away anytime soon, but women should just be aware that they're not going to solve the problem. They'll just maybe be a Band-Aid for a specific amount of time.
And then years later, when you do, obviously now for teenagers to prevent pregnancy, and then years later when they want to have a child, it can be difficult for some people. Okay, and I guess for some surgery for endometriosis, there's complications, and like, how do we find a skilled physician, and like, what's your take on surgery to remove it?
Absolutely. The vast majority of OBGYNs around the world practice ablation surgery, which is the superficial burning of the tissue of the lesion. And only a small handful have the training and capability to perform excision surgery, which is cutting out the lesion. And I mean, this is a common analogy, which consider an iceberg, where you have 10% of what you can see above, and then there's 90% below. So it just doesn't make sense that if you go in and burn the top of something and you can't see what's beneath it and you don't get it all out, that it would not solve the problem. I mean, if you had just imagine this, if you had a tumor, a cancerous tumor in your body, would you want the doctor to go in and burn the top of the tumor, or would you want the doctor to take the tumor out? I mean, it's really that simple. So it doesn't make sense that doctors would only perform an ablation surgery and expect a woman to feel better. And that's why there are, repeated surgeries are common for women with endometriosis. I've had 3. My first 2 were ablation, and my pain actually worsened until I got an excision surgery, and I felt like a different person. Granted, it didn't solve all of my issues because I had gone years with this disease kind of beating down on my body. So I had to deal with a lot of effects from that. But I did feel better once the actual disease was out. I did feel a difference. And to me, it's common sense. The problem is that the normal, regular OBGYN, no matter how well-meaning, just likely does not have the technical skill to perform excision. So we encourage referrals to endometriosis specialists that can perform excision. And without going into financial barriers necessarily yet, to me, that's the gold standard treatment.
Yeah, and would they go to your website there, or how would they find a surgeon in the US or internationally? Where would they find that?
Not our website. There are some really great resources on social media that I always point people to. On Facebook, there's Nancy's Nook, and they have a list of surgeons that they recommend, and they've been carefully vetted, and I would trust that list. There are 2 other great resources I always push people to. One is Endo Warriors, which is another patient-led advocacy group in the US, but they also have lists of doctors around the world. And the third is a group called Endometriosis, who also has a list. And I would suggest a woman look at the list and, reach out to the doctor, but also, she has to do her own homework. And the list is a great place to start, but ask questions and see how much you would feel comfortable with the doctor. A lot of times people go into surgery, just because surgery is so common now, not really considering it, but it's a big step. And if you're going to have surgery with someone, you really need to trust them and trust their ability.
Okay, so that's Nancy's Nook, Endo Warriors, and Endometriosis to check out for recommended physicians. Now, does everyone with endo need the surgery though? Like how do they determine when it's necessary?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I would say it's necessary if endometriosis is interfering with your quality of life regularly and substantially. For example, if it's interfering with your career, if it's interfering with your school, if it's interfering with your ability to conceive and have a child, I would think that those are all major reasons to maybe explore the idea of having surgery. If it's something you can manage, I don't know, that's an individual situation. So it really depends on what the individual's goals and priorities are.
And since you've been through it, so how long is the surgery and how long is the recovery?
It really, again,
it's obviously, depending on what they find when they go in, but.
Yeah, it is usually longer. Ablation surgery can be done in 20 minutes. You just go in and zap, zap, zap. Excision is more meticulous. Like I had extensive disease, so my surgery was several hours long. And I actually had bowel involvement and I had a giant, endometrioma. So my doctor, I was in the hospital for 5 days after the surgery.
Okay.
That's not necessarily always the case. Mine was just pretty extensive. Some women, I would say usually 1 or 2 days in hospital, and then the surgery is a few hours long. So recovery is probably just a little bit longer, but I would say having the benefit of excision surgery longer term is worth it.
So you found after the surgery your quality of life then improved as you?
Oh my goodness, I did a 180.
Okay.
I really did. But I continued with a very strict, I was, for months before surgery, I was on a very strict anti-inflammatory diet. Mm-hmm. I was doing acupuncture. I was taking very specific Chinese herbs from my acupuncturist, from someone I trusted in New York. And really following, this kind of anti-inflammatory lifestyle so that I wanted the surgery to be the most effective it could be. And I continued that for months afterward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this podcast is all about natural solutions. So we, recommend looking at diet, looking at your lifestyle, your sleep, your movement, and then we use functional tests to determine if there's gut infections and hormonal imbalances. So for you, some natural solutions. It sounds like you've tried. You've looked at the anti-inflammatory diet. So for you, taking out dairy, gluten, processed sugar. Anything else you want to talk about the diet for endo?
I think your strategy sounds very smart, undergoing first sensitivity testing and learning what the individual is sensitive to. Like, for example, I actually did that for the first time. The blood test for a few months ago. I was kind of always doing the elimination and kind of just doing my own trial and error. And I learned that I have a high sensitivity to eggs. Mm-hmm. I've gone all of my life without realizing that at all. So now I avoid eggs. And I knew I had a sensitivity to dairy, and that was confirmed. And also sugar. But I would definitely suggest that. And then beyond that, the elimination diet is the best that I've found to kind of figure out what your individual triggers are. And I found that if I cut meat a lot, it helps. I like protein, I like fish. And so if I do have meat, I make sure it comes from a good source. If it's fish, just wild caught. Mm-hmm. If I do have some type of red meat, which is very, very occasionally, I always try to figure out if it's grass-fed and where it came from. Because with industrially processed meat, you're just, oh gosh, just think about all the chemicals you're putting into your body with all of that. So
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the elimination diet is the gold standard because we can, what's good for you may not be good for someone else. So it's just really, we look at, as I say, the food sensitivity and then the elimination diet. But I think for like general recommendations for endo is gluten-free, dairy-free, no red meat, but as you say, having occasionally processed sugar-free. And then also we talked a little bit about this too, sort of the environmental toxins. What have you done with that?
Right. There's been a lot of research suggesting that endometriosis could somehow be triggered by environmental toxins. And if you know about a little bit about the field of epigenetics, basically where certain things are turned on or off in your genes throughout life.
Mhm.
And my sense is that there's something there. There's still a lot of questions in regard to endometriosis, but at the same time, it's common sense. Like, I don't want chemicals in my body, regardless of whether or not it affects endometriosis or cancer or anything. I just don't want chemicals in my body. So it makes sense to me to eat as cleanly as possible, to have products that don't have a lot of additives. Like I use coconut oil
Mhm.
on my body, and it seems to like it the best. So I would recommend all of that. And I did talk about a website in the film called the Environmental Working Group. It's
Mhm.
ewg.org. And they're a nonprofit, nonpartisan, organization that really does a phenomenal job trying to keep tabs on the toxic load in all of our cosmetics and body care products and other things, we encounter in our daily lives. So I would suggest any listeners checking them out. They're a great resource.
Yeah, that's a great one. So ewg.org. They also have the Skin Deep database, so you can go on and get your products, and you can get them rated there to see exactly what they are. And then, and we don't necessarily say throw everything out, but as things finish, just start replacing it with natural products. Because I think it's an average woman goes out the house with 127 chemicals on her body because she's different with her shampoo, with her moisturizers, and all these different things. And it does, that environmental stress, the mental emotional stress, the physical stress too of kind of going through all of this can impact your body. So yeah, these are things to look at. And as far as sleep, I don't know, what's your take on sort of the lifestyle things with sleep?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a lot of people forget about sleep, right? And I think sleep is the first thing that people should be focusing on, is getting a really good night's sleep. For example, I could tell last night I didn't sleep as well. I got to bed a little bit later. It was a little bit stressful. I had a stressful morning with the girls, my daughters, and I had to get up early. And today, I don't feel as productive. I don't feel like 100%, whereas the night before I got a great night's sleep. And, yesterday it was like, all right, let's do this. I mean, you don't really need a lot of science behind it, which there is a lot of science behind it you can check out. But I think everybody understands when you sleep well, you feel better and your body is operating optimally. And I would say hydration also goes hand in hand with that. Getting a good night's sleep and drinking enough water and staying hydrated are two things everyone can do without worrying about cost or stress or busy lives. So I would say put those at the top two of your priority list.
Yeah, it's really those foundational pillars. And so when we know them, but busy Western lifestyle, that we put them on the back burner. Whereas
Yeah.
sleep, to prioritize it, making sure you're drinking your water. It's so many women, it's like, oh, we're not. I was the same way. I'd have maybe a couple glasses of water a day, and now because I drink so much of it, I just need to have even more.
Yeah, the same. And a practical tip there, which you probably do as well. Like I've bought one of those like larger kind of canister water bottles,
Mhm.
and I always have it with me. The one with the lids on them, and each one has like 3 or 4 glasses of water in it. And I fill it up, 3 or 4 times a day, and I have it with me wherever I go, from running errands or from at my computer right next to me, and it helps me drink more water because if I just have, a glass or two every time I pass the kitchen, I find I'm not going to, get what I need.
Mhm.
So just that one small purchase has made a huge difference in my water intake.
So, and as far as any resources you can recommend to our listeners, if there's a book or a website or an app, anything, obviously we're going to recommend your website, but anything you can think of that you like?
Goodness. I mean, there are several good endometriosis resource books out there that a woman, if she wants to read something, that she can delve into. And beyond that, apps. Goodness. I mean, Citizen Endo, which is a team based out of Columbia University in the US, and their co-founders have endometriosis, but they also are professors at Columbia. And they've put together like an endometriosis symptom tracker, which I think is really useful.
Hmm.
So women can go in and track their symptoms. And the idea is not only to help the woman kind of anticipate her schedule and try to get a sense of when she has symptoms and why, so she can share with her doctor, but they're also working with doctors so to convey all of this information so that they can kind of evolve the way doctors are perceiving endometriosis and treating it.
Awesome. So that's Citizen Endo, and it's an app.
Yes.
And then one success story you'd like to share.
Oh, well, I mean, I can share my own if you want me to. I think it's a success story, relatively speaking.
Yeah, wonderful.
So I had, like I said, symptoms from when I was a teenager till 29. And I had a couple of ablation surgeries when I realized I had endometriosis, which my OBGYN just said kind of offhandedly when she went in to take out a cyst on my ovary, oh, by the way, you have endometriosis. And I was like, and I literally was like, endo what?
Yeah. Yeah.
What? and she totally blew it off and acted like it wasn't a big deal. And just being who I am, I of course went straight home and was like Googling like this crazy word that she just told me I have. And it sounded kind of scary. And the thing that bothered me the most is it said that, how it impacted fertility. Mm-hmm. And that really scared me because I definitely wanted children. And at 29, I was kind of coming into that time in my life where that was something I wanted to think about. I was newly married and it was just on our radar. So I just kept researching. And unfortunately, we were able to get pregnant and I had a miscarriage and we continued on. And I just kind of thought, okay, that was unlucky, unfortunate, but maybe it's just miscarriage, unfortunately, is common. So I thought maybe this is just, how things are going to be. So I did some more research and I learned about excision surgery and found a surgeon in New York where I was living at the time and started this idea of an anti-inflammatory diet and regimen because it just made sense to me. Mm-hmm. It just made sense to feel better. And so I won't say it was easy, especially in the beginning. But I cut everything because it's amazing what can motivate you, right? Mm-hmm. Because I just thought about having a child and that's motivated me more than anything else. So I cut out everything. And I will say after 2 or 3 weeks, it got so much easier because I started feeling so much better. I started thinking more clearly and I felt I had more energy and I lost weight. All of the inflammation went down in my body. I had to get new pants and I was like, okay, I like the side effect of this diet that this is happening. But anyway, so I had the excision surgery and even, more inflammation went down in my body. I could tell immediately after surgery where I would used to have like a lot of bloating in my stomach. My stomach was concave after the surgery. It was amazing. And it stayed that way. So those, the lesions that were causing that inflammatory response in my stomach were gone. So of course, the root of the inflammation was gone as well. And I was very fortunate that 3 months after excision surgery, I conceived.
Wow.
And we were able to sustain the pregnancy. I will say that it was a little perilous there in the beginning because my progesterone levels were they were perfect. They were great. And at about week 7, they plummeted. And luckily I had a different OBGYN in New York and he caught it. And I remember he called me because he did these tests and he called me one morning and he said, okay, how close are you to a pharmacy? Mm-hmm. And I was like, there's 1-2 blocks away. He's like, okay, I've got the information. I want you to leave your house right now, either take water or buy water there and take this medicine I'm going to give you before you leave the pharmacy. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, of course it scared me to death, but he was giving me, a progesterone supplement. He was that worried because I was starting to spot and everything. He's that worried. Yeah. So I did. And luckily it saved the pregnancy and it's our 10-year-old daughter, Sophia, right now. And I did have a miscarriage in between my 2 daughters again. And it was something unfortunate but we were able, I will say this, after I had the second miscarriage, which was, I had to have an emergency D&C in the hospital in New York. It was kind of traumatic and my body went into this state of, I didn't have a cycle for 9 months. Oh. And I didn't quite know what to do about it because I knew I wanted to have more children. And I went to some of the city's best reproductive endocrinologists, like Harvard educated. Everybody, you have to wait forever to get in to see these people and they're so highly touted. And I was told that I was entering menopause early and that I would never have children again. And that was obviously a little distressing. And luckily I went to my acupuncturist and herbalist who I trust. And she said, do not listen to them. Yes. Do not listen to them. If you do everything I tell you and don't cheat, I I can almost guarantee you'll have your cycles back in 3 months. And if you want to get pregnant, I can get you pregnant in 3 to 6 months. I know, you probably shouldn't be told that, but she did tell me that. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So I want to, again, a very strict anti-inflammatory diet. I got, regular acupuncture. I took these really pungent smelling herbal raw herbs, and I was pregnant in 3 months with our second daughter. So I'm a huge, huge believer and natural methods for fertility. But I also believe that if I had not gotten that excision surgery, for me personally, I don't know that I would have conceived. I don't know. I don't know, but I do think that I felt a lot better and the inflammation went down and the whole inflammatory process in my body kind of stopped so that my body could not be on high alert and could start healing and sustain the pregnancy well.
Yeah, we believe in that, having everyone at the table, your RE, your OBGYN, your acupuncturist, your coach, your nutritionist, like all these people, and you're at the center of the healing. So it's like one person may say something, but you're in charge. And sometimes that well-meaning RE, that what he said, that you may not, you're going into menopause, might get ingrained in your mind, and then you don't do anything. Whereas there's other things that can be done, but it's that integrated approach.
Absolutely.
Okay, so if you could just share a little bit about how they can find the movie, the documentary Endo What, and then also you've got some other initiatives that are going on.
Sure. Yes. Endo What is available on our website at endowhat.com. And I should say that proceeds from the sales of the film go directly to educational initiatives that we have going around the world. One of which is a school nurse initiative where we're giving school nurse toolkits to nurses. Well, in every country, actually. We've started, different countries, don't have school nurses, but so we've made concessions and trying to cater to what each country is doing with as far as providing medical services to middle school age and high school age children. And we give a school nurse kit, which is a copy of the film, an 8-page booklet for the nurse about endometriosis, and a poster to hang in the infirmary, which tells patients about endometriosis and the common symptoms. So those are one of the initiatives that Sales of the Film supports. And I should also say that we can also offer your listeners, we have free digital copies of the film.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I'm not quite sure how you'd like to offer that, but I wanted to say that we'd love to encourage people to watch the film and can offer that. Okay. And as far as we have a large initiative that, I should say, just launched June 1st. And it is being spearheaded by Senator Elizabeth Warren and Senator Orrin Hatch in the U.S., which is quite significant because they're from different sides of the aisle, which is no small feat in today's political climate. So they're both behind this initiative for awareness and to generate research funding to find answers to the disease. So, and the website for that is endowhat.org.
So Senator Elizabeth Warren, sorry, what was the other senator's name?
Senator Orrin Hatch.
Orrin Hatch. And yeah, so that's launching June 1st. So what could we expect from that?
Well, we're doing a large-scale awareness campaign with a few also other well-known people that I can't quite name yet, but they will be announced soon. And the idea is to bring this word endometriosis into the mainstream to all different types of demographics so that girls and women can feel more comfortable talking about it, and that people in their lives feel more comfortable being receptive to conversations about it. And beyond that, we're working to educate healthcare providers and put pressure on decision makers within the healthcare community to better educate doctors and to put initiatives in place to put patients first.
Yeah, this is amazing. When you're talking about the school nurse thing, I had a little tear in my eye. I'm like, oh my goodness, say like a little teenager came in and then they received this information. It's like, wow, this is, empowering, because they may think that this is what their period is like. And it's really important to get that message to young women. So
Absolutely.
I love that. And
yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
it would if I had heard that word, like I went into my school nurse when I had really bad cramps in high school, and she just gave me 2 ibuprofen and said, lie on your side. And I was there for the whole day. It totally knocked me out. If I had heard that word and knew that at 16, I can't even imagine how much it would have impacted my life. It wasn't even on my radar till late 20s,
Yeah. As you say, it's about awareness. So this awareness campaign. So that's coming out June 1st. You can go to endowhat.org. So ENDOWHAT.org. what.org. And then also we'll have in the show notes where you can access a free digital copy of the film Endo What, which is super powerful. It's only, I think it's an hour and 20 minutes. So it's a thing you can watch quite quickly. And it's just so informative. And it talks about some of the things that we discussed today, but it's just a very, very powerful movie. So I definitely recommend taking a look at that. And I thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your words of wisdom and your personal story. It's just been very informative.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me, Sarah. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Hey there, Sarah Clark here. So are you struggling to have your baby? First of all, please know that my heart goes out to you. I support couples worldwide who are struggling with infertility to conceive and have healthy babies. Women like Rita, who gave birth to her beautiful daughter after following my fertility coaching system. Or Danielle, who after 2 failed IUIs was able to get pregnant after a Supercharge Your Fertility discovery call with me. So here's how you get my help for free. So I offer a free Supercharge Your Fertility discovery call, and on that call, I'll create a plan with you that is going to help you fast track your success. So this call is not for everyone, and I'm really picky about who I get to speak with. And I have a strict but totally reasonable criteria that needs to be met in order for us to move forward. So here's who I can help. So first of all, you need to be able to explore your infertility diagnosis in a new light. So this offers for people who are open-minded, they're coachable, and if you can do that and want to double or triple your chances at the fertility clinic or get pregnant, awesome. So let's get on the phone and chat. Also, you must be an action taker. So someone who's committed to seeing results, you're able to follow directions. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to do anything bizarre. But if you're one of those people who like to consume a ton of information, but don't like to spend time implementing and seeing results, then the call's not really for you. So I only want to spend time with people who are genuinely committed to their own success. So just click on the link in the show notes and apply, or go to fabfertile.com and click on the free consult. So it's a really short application that just tells me about your health, how long you've been trying to conceive, and how soon you'd like to be pregnant. So seriously, this is going to be the best time you've ever spent on your fertility. Looking forward to chatting. Talk soon. Thank you for listening to Get Pregnant Naturally. Seriously, it means the world to me that you're here. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can be notified of upcoming episodes. I'm excited to offer you a special gift. If you are a U.S. resident, text FERTILE, FERTILE, to 345345. You'll be prompted to enter your email address, and you will receive our 3-day free fertility diet challenge. The challenge includes delicious chef-prepared recipes that are specifically designed to enhance your fertility. Download the recipes and try them this weekend. For U.S. residents, text FERTILE, FERTILE, to 345345. For non-U.S. residents, go to www.fertilitydietfreebie.com to access your special gift. That is Fertility Diet Freebie, FERTILITY, Diet, DIET, freebie, FREEBIE.com to access the 3-day free fertility diet challenge. And I love this quote by Dr. Mark Hyman. He's the medical director of the Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine and the chairman of the Institute for Functional Medicine. What you find at the end of your fork is more powerful than anything you'll find at the bottom of a pill bottle. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.